So, what are we going to talk about today? So, we're going to talk about just a practical introduction to the Meta Interaction SDK for Unity. After this session, you will be able to set up the Interaction SDK and just understand the core concepts. We go into Unity, we'll like play around with it a little bit, but just a perspective from someone that has worked with it with both technical and non-technical people. If you do have questions, please go ahead and let me know. Session is for you guys. If you have questions, I'm just happy to address them as they come. Right. My name is Diego Gonzalez. I'm a senior software developer at a local company. It's an indie studio called Buffalo, where we describe ourselves as a future-facing studio. So we'll do a lot of things with immersive technology, kind of like cutting edge, bleeding edge technology. See how we can make this into a fun experience, or some sort of like entertaining experience, right? So let's go ahead and start. Let's go ahead and get started. Again, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about today about the Meta Interaction SDK. For today, we're going to have a quick intro and setup. A few little bits of advice that someone that has set it up 1,000 times, it's useful to know. We're going to go over some of the core concepts and how they apply into Unity altogether, and we're going to leave some space for the QA. Just some useful reminders. This session is recorded, so hello everyone that's seeing us from the future, and it will be available in Discord within 7 days. Please be active in the chat if you have insights and can help answer each of the questions. That's awesome. But it's also welcome if you can tell us, right? If you do have technical problems, do not hesitate to reach out. At the end, there's going to be a survey, so help us make these mentorships better for you, right? So important thing, tagging the appropriate channels for feedback. Just don't DM me because it can be a little bit overwhelming and I could miss DM. So the appropriate channels could be the best way for you to get answered, not only from me, but from the lovely Discord Star community that has a lot of expertise. So let's go ahead and get started. To begin is, what is the interaction SDK? Like what is this thing that I've been talking about? Basically, it's a collection of prefabs, components, and all sorts of scenes and interactions that allows us to create interactions easily. It includes components like grabbables, bulk interactables, ray interactables, etc. Why would we want to use these things, right? The first and foremost reason is because this interaction SDK has been built from a conglomeration of a lot of previous use cases. Basically, now that the medium of virtual reality is a bit more mature, there's been a lot of common use cases that have been condensed into an interaction SDK. Meaning that if you have thought about it, it's very likely that it's part of the SDK already, right? And why is this helpful? Well, it's because it will help you get started really quickly. Being able to just download the SDK and just go into the fray super quick is a super valuable tool so that you can prove what your proof of concept is, right? With this, you are going to be able to get started quickly, right? But it's not only useful for a prototype, it's also useful for production. And what does this mean is that if you work with it and understand it, it's very likely that you're going to be able to put this in an app that you're going to be able to publish, right? A lot of the times we're looking for the best way to ensure that the interactions that we make with our users are reliable, are well tested. So having these available as something you can use at a production level is very useful, right? The other thing is we're not reinventing the wheel, right? We're not, as I mentioned before, if you have thought about it, we probably have already made it, right? And that means that you can not wrap your head around having to remake something that's already available to you. And another important one is that it's designer friendly, because there's a lot of no-code tools available. If you're part of a multidisciplinary team, having one of your designers be able to jump in and really proof test their idea before there's a line of code laid down, that's a really valuable thing. But that doesn't limit your potential, because all of this has an open architecture, meaning that you can actually go into the components, see how they're put together, how they're extending one another. It means that you can yourself extend the SDK and be able to create your own interactables, your own grabbables, your own things, right? So the fact that this is an SDK that is available does not limit your capacity of extending it further, right? So that's kind of awesome. So it's great for designers, it's great for programmers, and in a world where people can work together, it's a great tool, right? First off, for the setups and basics, I created a sample project, so I'm gonna give you like a little bit of a heads up. I just use Unity 6.46, so you can use the latest Unity version. It's fine, but do make sure to set your platform as Android first. And the reason about this is because you're gonna be importing a lot of assets. If you import them for the default platform, which is PC, and then switch your platform to Android, it's going to just take a little bit longer, right? It's going to be first the initial import time, and then you're going to have to wait a lot longer when you change your platform, right? So first and foremost, either open or create your new Unity project as the Android platform first, and then import the settings, right? The second thing is we're going to import it from the Unity Asset Store. And if you go into the asset store and look for the SDK, you're going to find that there's actually more than one option, right? You're going to find the Meta All-in-One SDK and the Meta Core SDK. We're going to go into the differences of how to choose the one that you should use. Um, but just be aware that when you look for it in the asset store, this is what you're going to see, right? Now, this is going to be like a fairly short, fairly quick way of setting it up, just because we don't have a lot of time today, right? I just want to highlight that there is a setup guide in the Meta website that goes over every single detail. This is kind of like a condensed version of that same, right? So let's go first with what is the all-in-one SDK and when should you choose to use the core or the all SDK. I created this nifty little like pizza diagram. Basically, what it is everything that's contained in the core is actually contained inside of the all-in-one SDK, right? The all-in-one SDK basically contains not only the core and interaction SDK, but all of the packages that Meta offers as part of their integrations, whether it be voice, mixed reality, hand tracking, audio. Just choose to represent them in a simple way so that you can tell like, okay, this is part of it. Which one would you choose? You should choose the one that's closer to your skill level. The great thing about the all-in-one SDK is that it comes with everything, right? But if you remember the time where before the all-in-one SDK being its new separated version, when it would still call Oculus Integrations, you would include everything, and it didn't matter what the scope of your project was. It came with absolutely everything, and that meant visual assets, textures, audio, and not every single project really requires every single aspect of the SDK. So the fact that the core, which is basically the very minimum that you need to get up and running, um, allows your projects to be lightweight, right? And for your Unity time when you open your project to be quicker, right? Because maybe for the first project, if you have the only one SDK and it's everything you need, that's awesome. But when you have 5, 7, 9 projects, it starts to stack up, right? And the time that it takes you to open, if it's not required, then it can be slow. So in this day and age, just having the option of going for the stripped down version that has only the things that you need, it's actually a great option to have. So I'm actually quite grateful for that. Anyway, for this one, we will go with the all-in-one. But if you really need it for your own project, you can just go with the core and then add any subsets of the SDK as you need to, right? Okay, so again, general pieces of advice when continuing your setup. Do install the XR plugin management in the project settings. Is under the project settings, and make sure to install the OpenXR plugin for both the PC and Android. This is important because even though if your platform is set as Android, the settings set up in your computer when you're in the editor will be the ones that are on the PC side, right? So you could be like, oh yes, hey, I have imported my XR plugin for Android, but it's not working. When I put on my headset, I press play, it's not going into my headset. What's going on, right? So just make sure that you have it for both PC and Android, because that's a very common issue that I've seen. And to follow and apply all the fixes once the SDK has been installed, right? It comes with a very handy project setup tool that will highlight it at, hey, you're missing these things. Um, uh, Most commonly, it would be that you would have to restart your editor a couple of times, and then that you will have to make sure that you have the right plugin. There has been this great progress where the SDK is actually going towards using the OpenXR standard, which means that it's going to be compatible with other devices, and it's great because it doesn't lock you in, but you get to use a lot of the cool features that it has, right? So it's not locked in to this platform, right? And again, continuing this part of the XR plugin management, you'll notice that you do have options to install either the plugin for Oculus or OpenXR. And there's a big window that'll say, hey, if you're doing a new project, use OpenXR. We still have compatibility with the Oculus one, which is the one that we made. And if your project is using an older one, you can continue to use that. But if you're doing a new one, we strongly recommend for you to do OpenXR, right? Big important thing that the SDKs come from is the building blocks, which is a ready-made collection of prefabs. And these prefabs are amazing because this building block compatibility layer, they have made it so that if you're missing some sort of dependency to make an interaction work, it will tell you like, hey, you're missing the part of the rig that would control the hand tracking. And if you add a new building block that requires it, it will instantiate it on its own. Again, the reason why this is important is very historical. Back in the day when you were trying to like create these interactions on your own, that wouldn't happen, and you're like, oh, I have my setup exactly as I see it in other setups, and it's not working, right? Why is it not working? Well, the building blocks are a great solution to that because they will tell you, hey, you're missing this component, or hey, when you have added this building block, it has added the components that you needed, right? So it'll show you. The building blocks actually have many areas or sub areas, all the way from like audio, avatars, core, haptics, multiplayer pass through, and it's a great way to get started. The only place I would not recommend just using the building blocks is if you need something that is highly customized to your very specific use case. But that can only come with practice, right? They're a great starting point, and if you are still trying to figure out, they're a great starting point. So you should do it. The other thing that's great about them is that their setup is fairly minimal, which means that like it only has the components that you need to make that happen. And this is important from the educational point of view, because that means that if you're trying to understand how the interactions are put together, you can say, okay, in the building block, I see that this grabbable only needs the grabbable and the hand grabbable components to work exactly as I need it, right? So it it also goes a long way towards getting you to understand how this is put together. Because one of the big things that you will also find out is because of the quantity of components that the SDK comes with, you can actually continue to extend the level of interactions that you have available. Um, uh, like having some sort of feedback for when a thing happens or things like that. And you can do those with the components that are required, but those aren't part of like what the default is, which means that your setup can be very minimal and very custom. Now, before I move on, is there any questions so far about what I've outlined here? Raise your hands, kind of like come off mute, say hello. Curious, how well does the current interaction SDK work with other utils assets such as AutoHand asset? In the past, it wasn't effective to try and work on mixing other features, things with interaction SDK. I was focused on restrictive and flexibility. I wonder if things are different now. And mix and match approaches features, other asset tools is workable. Example, AutoHand working together with the interaction SDK where they have their own graph. Okay, that's actually a fantastic question because we're moving towards OpenXR. There's a higher chance that things will be compatible. If you have used AutoHand, you won't let me lie. Their rigs could be different. Oculus had its own rig. AutoHand had like the OpenXR rig. So like now the rig is kind of like standardized across like multiple things. Now this is not a guarantee. It doesn't mean that like it will work as out of the box. But if there's a standard that is OpenXR and now that is put through the lens of what the Interaction SDK has, it's very workable. However, here's another thing. One of the big things that the Interaction SDK actually comes with is the capability of both grabbing with your hands and setting your own poses through the editor, which means that like using an older approach like AutoHand is actually a lot less needed. Now you can do interactive poses. You can set up so that you can grab objects with either a pinch, your whole hand, the button, and all of those combined together, right? So I would still recommend, hey, give it a try, but I would also would recommend see what's possible with the SDK, because a lot of the well, it might feel a little bit restricted that you're just using like one approach. You can also realize that the current version of the SDK is very, very powerful. So thank you, Racer. That was a great question. Now, moving on from this, we're talking like, okay, so we have minimal setups that like can help me get started, right? But what if I'm trying to do a bit of a more complex interaction, right? That's where the other source of amazing information is, which is the sample scenes. The sample scenes come not bundled by default with the SDK. Again, we're trying to keep it minimal. We're trying to make sure that like you don't have to like wait too long to like open your unit project. But these ready-made scenes have a still fairly minimal but showcase setup, but that also showcase what is possible with the SDK in multiple different contexts. So, for example, the choose that I seen to the pick, choose to the pick is the snappable scene, where you can see a complete setup of objects that can be grabbed, can be moved, and can be snapped into the orbits that you see, right? And you can greatly and easily understand what the use case is, but you get to interact with it. You get to see how it's put together. A lot of the times you can just come and like, hey, I have this thing. I'll make it into a prefab. I change the visuals, and boom, you have a complete interaction, right? So like these scenes are like an absolutely treasure trove, like of what the SDK is capable for. And if you actually browse around them and see them a little bit, they even come with like, I'm not gonna call them hidden extras, but if you see like, oh, there's this component for feedback that is just disabled. What happens if I turn it on? Oh, okay, so it's giving me behind the scenes debug like level of understanding of how this scene is put together, right? So very strongly recommend you guys go check them out because they're very, very handy, literally. Okay, so and okay, this sounds awesome. You sound that you guys are convinced that the sample scenes are a great way to go about it. But how do we get them, right? Because if you have worked with a package manager before, this is a screenshot of how the SDK looks in the package manager, and you'll see that the all-in-one SDK only has instructions. And if you say, look at those instructions, say, hey, this is how you find them, right? Basically, what those instructions are going to tell you is that because of how well it's put, how well it's put together. Uh, every single package that is part of the all-in-one SDK comes with their own sample scenes. And this is great because it means that if you import everything, um, it's not gonna bloat your project with two versions of the sample scenes, for example, that I've seen like some other like branching packages do. But that you can also choose and go and grab like the ones that you need. So for example, here is the ones specific to the interaction SDK. And you can see they have the example scenes, the feature scenes, and some editor tooling, right? So all you have to do is go into the all-in-one SDK, see what the dependencies are, and then from the dependencies, you can just click the dependency, go into the samples tab, and just import them. Now, if this looks a little bit esoteric and detached, I will go over the setup like live so you can have it in the recording. But this presentation should be like a really good way to like go back. Like, oh, where was that thing? Okay, yeah, it was in samples, right? So so far everything sounds good. We have imported the project. Again, we'll do it live so that we can see it in context. But with this, you should be able to just in 5-10 minutes get everything and get started. Other important pieces of advice that I'm gonna tell you when you have this is make a build and make it early, because one of the things that you will see is once you think you have everything set up and you open one of these things, if you build one of those things and it works, you're 90% of the way there to just be able to make a usable app, right? If something in that spot where you haven't even touched anything fails, it is important to debug it early, because um, I want you to be in a position where as you are adding stuff to your project and then it stops building at some point, or it never built from the beginning, that you can easily debug it, right? If you try to like do all of these scenes and it doesn't work, okay, you know that it's something in the setup and you can do it easily. If it works right now and then you continue to add things and it suddenly stops building, you will know, oh, okay, it was that last thing that I did. So A big, big piece of advice is build early and build often. It's gonna save you a lot of headaches. Not to mention the fact that because of how Unity additive building works, it also means that your relative building time is gonna be a lot quicker. Who here has not been in a position where you have been working on a big project for a while, and when it's finally time to build, oh, it's gonna take 6 hours, right? And then your computer is basically unusable for those 6 hours, right? And what if it crashes in the middle, right? But if you build early, the first one might take you 15 minutes. The second one, 3 minutes. The third one, 5 minutes. Building consistently beyond that, 10 minutes, right? And you will be, in average, waiting a lot less compared if you don't build early, right? So that's a big, big piece of advice I always like to give people. Um, so let's move on to the core concepts, right? One of the big things that we have here that you will find a lot is that there's interactors and interactables, right? The words look fairly similar, so be on the lookout for interactor, interactable, because that's gonna give you a little bit of a clue of how things are put together, right? Interactors are basically anything that has to do with user input. So all the way from like the controller position, rotation, the head, to like hand tracking, your finger position, your gestures, but also some classical uses of VR, right? Ray casting, pointing, all of that stuff, right? So those are your interactors. And then your interactables are the objects that can react to that input, right? For example, if I do the right pose in the right position, I will be able to grab a thing, right? If I then release that interaction in the right spot, it's gonna snap onto the positions that I had set up, right? But as I said, because all of these are built on top of the pointable and interactable interfaces, that means that you don't really have to pick and choose what is compatible with what, right? If you make a grabbable, you can grab it with your hands, you can grab it with Array, you can grab it with controllers, and you don't really have to second guess yourself how to create this interaction. If you in the past have tried to make your own grabbable system, you know that, um, when you were iterating early, it was like, okay, I can grab it with the controller, but oh, what happens now if I want to grab it with my hand? Or what happens if my use case changes and I want to be able to grab stuff from a distance, right? With the SDK, because everything is built on top of the interfaces, it means that like it will be compatible with one another, right? And it will mean that like a lot of the components are just interchangeable and usable between one another, right? So that's like a great way of how the system is architected. And if you're a programmer, if you just go into the code and see, oh, okay, so if I want to make my own interactable, I just need to implement this interface and implement these methods, and boom, I have my custom interactable. Let's say I want to make some sort of like interactable that when I grab it, it spins, or an interactable that it has a very unique use case that is specific to my project alone, right? So you're not constrained to what the project, the SDK already offers you, right? It gives you those tools to be able to build it beyond what it currently is. And that, I think that's just fantastic. Questions about this so far as well? No? Thumbs up? Are we following along good? Okay, awesome. All right, so the states, right? There is this very important overarching like set of states that you will see on across all of the objects. Which is, hey, what is the state that my current interactable is in, right? Is it unselected? Is it hover? Is it selected? Is it active? Now, these states are universal across all of them, but how they present themselves across the interactables could be different, right? Because, for example, when we do a lot of like the Unity UI buttons, you'll see that it has at least 4 states, right? It is currently interactable, which means that you can interact with it, right? Hover, which means that the user has its attention or its pointer on top of it. Selected, which is currently being used, and or active, right? Like it's been clicked, right? Like on hover, on selected, or on click. It's kind of like that similar state, but that's for UI buttons, for example. What happens when you're interactable is an object that is grabbing, for example. Well, then that means that unselected is when your hands are nowhere nearby it. Hover is when your hands are within grabbing range. Selected is when it's actually grabbed. And depending if you have grab interactable, think of it like maybe like a laser gun. It could be graph, which means that it's selected but not active, and it's not active until you pull the trigger and it shoots array, right? So how these elements get represented on every interactable could be different. So just keep that in mind, right? Same thing for like snappables, same thing for like uh, posables, all of that stuff, right? So um, one of the things that the system does is that all of the interactables actually keep track of their current state and their previous state. So that you can actually differentiate interactions where, like, for example, oh, the user can have an intent to grab it, but then didn't grab it and moved their hand away, right? If you compare these, for example, with a button, for example, we don't do something for when you start covering something, right? But maybe for a grabbable, you being able to communicate information to the player based on that specific interaction then becomes kind of important, right? Or when you want to know when they release something. What if you have some sort of like item that you have to shake, and the moment that you stop shaking and then you release it, then it does something, right? Like maybe like a confetti gun or something like that. So knowing not only what are you doing, but where are you coming from, then becomes kind of important. All of the interactables have event that you can subscribe to that will say, hey, when state changed, and as parameters, it will give you the current state and the previous state, right? But how do we as developers know when this state has been triggered? And more importantly, again, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, right? What if we, again, have a designer, they want to be able to like uh, have some feedback based on an interaction, but their coding skills are not there yet, right? So one of the big things is that the SDK itself can provide these events, right? You can know when something was activated, when it was stopped being active, when it was selected, when it was unselected, when it was hovered, when it was unhovered, right? And these events basically interject themselves when there's a status change based on the current and the previous one and the previous event. And um, as I put them very handily here, there is a lot of event wrappers, which means that all of these events can be exposed to the editor and connected through the editor without having to write a single line of code, which is super awesome. If you have used Unity events in the past, they're just this fantastic thing that basically allows you as developer to become a dependency injection framework, or more easily just being able to connect things in the editor without adding more code, right? They're very common, for example, in buttons. When clicked, disable this object, enable this object. Just a piece of advice, make sure that the component that is referring to is reference, just because if it's not there, you'll be like, oh, why is this not working? I already put this here at the same level. You do have to reference your component manually. But the good thing about that is that this means that these event wrappers are independent of the hierarchy, which means that you can have it at any level. It's always a good practice that if you have events or things that affect the state of an object, that you put them at the root object if it makes sense for them to be there, just because it makes this dependency injection that you're doing manually a lot more visible. The one downside of doing the dependency injection through editor events and not code is that sometimes it gets a little bit harder to debug, right? If you don't know what's connected with what via the events, if you just searching for it in the code, it can be like, oh, yeah, okay, here's the event that's actually triggering. So another important piece is that there is event wrappers for both pointables and interactables. And that means that, for interactables, it might work in one way, it might have a few events. For pointables, it might have other events. We will go over how these actually work on the practical Unity side of this, right? But just make sure to like always reference your pointable, your interactable, and that also means that again, you can have them at any level of the hierarchy. They don't need to be at the same level, and you will see that a lot when we go to that part. And then one is also that very important. Okay, so we have interactions. We can put them all very easily in our Unity scene, but how to make sure that only some objects can use these interactions, right? What if I have an experience where I'm training people to do like blue collar work, like electrician work or something like that, and then you have a set of tools that you want to put in the wall, right? How do you make sure that all of these tools that are interactable are the only ones that you can put in the wall and not, for example, other objects like cables or any sorts of interaction with that, right? Well, we have a couple of components that are very useful, which is the tag set and the tag set filter. Basically, this is a tag set is a set of descriptors that you can give specific attributes to your interactable object, right? I mean, that you can say, hey, this is a key, and this is blue, this is red, and for this key to be able to interact with this lock, it needs to be a key, and it needs to be green, right? You can set your limitations um, through these tag set filters, right? All that you need to do is to reference them in the right spot. But enough talk. Let's actually see how all of this comes together. Now, before I move on, does anybody have any questions about this concept so far? I would love to like explain them before we like actually see them in action. Thumbs up, thumbs down. If we're all good to go, silence is bliss. Awesome. Okay, so let's actually see how all of these looks together in Unity, right? First of all, I can show you like how quick the setup is. It might not be the greatest use of our time because we're over half an hour, but at the same time, it is important to show like that. Yeah, it is super easy. So I'm just gonna go ahead, create a new Unity project. URP, 3D, doesn't matter. We don't want to use universe control. Okay, that's fine. And then Interaction SDK example, right? You just go ahead, create your Unity project. URP is fine, non-URP, totally fine. In your own. Hopefully that won't take too long to load. But as I said, either start it on the better platform, which is Android, because as we know, the Meta Quest is an Android device, and being able to test on device early, very important. Now, first mistake I made here, I actually didn't start it in the right platform, but you can always change it. So was an intentional mistake, but for you to see it. Now, this is taking a little bit. All right, so like any good baking show, we already have a cake baked, so I'm just gonna show you the other one that I have, right? Same thing idea, you go into the asset store. Let's go ahead and, yeah, okay, that's good. You can always search for the Meta SDK Meta SDK. If you just look for the Meta SDK, you'll see that there's two options, right? There's a core and there's all-in-one. Really easily, just add it to your assets right here. Up to my assets, and then it's gonna be there, right? And then the window, it's gonna say open in Unity. What this does is this will open the package manager on whichever version of Unity you have open. And come on. All right, it's still taking a while. So if you do, it will just say, hey, window, or if you already have it on your assets, you can just go into the package manager, and then it will show you this lovely window right here. So in this case, my asset's taking a couple of minutes to load. There you go. You can see here that the Meta all-in-one SDK is part of my assets. I really wanted to import it in the other one, but it is taking its sweet time. So if it wasn't imported, we just press add to project. And then here you can see what we described, which is the dependencies, right? We have right here the SDK interaction. So if you actually see which packages are already in your project, you'll see here, oh, the interaction SDK, right? And then here's the description. I'll give you like a really nice description with links, version history. There is this version came out recently, very stable, fully recommended. And then here, if you see the samples, you can see that you can just press this button and they will be imported. If you are having trouble finding set samples, when you're looking here, again, you can just look for them. See. Now, for whoever hasn't encountered this notation before, it's basically I'm asking my Unity editor for all of the assets that I have of type scene, right? So you can see that you can all of them are right here, right? And then you just write the name of the scene. Again, I love using my favorite, the snap scene. You'll see that it is right here, right? Again, your fixes, it's usually very useful to just add them. It seems that this is going to take a while, so we're not going to re-import it into the project. but that's fine because the setup again is very easy, right? Second thing, again, as I mentioned, make sure that when you are in your project settings, that your XR plugin management is enabled, and you can do that through the package manager. And then that you're using the OpenXR for both um, Android and Windows. Yes, you can also do this on Mac. The only limitation is that testing in editor is a little bit slower because you don't have like Oculus Quest link. But as someone that is primarily a Mac person, the what is the thing called? The simulator has come a very long way and it's very usable. So even if you want to iterate quickly, oh, there you go. This finally open. I mean, we can just use the one that's already set up. As I said, the simulator has come a really long way, so you can actually really use it, right? So again, first things first, the building blocks, very handy. You can see here that if you go into the interaction side, there's a bunch of pre-made interactions. I love working with Oculus Link. Yes, it's great. It's great because um, the name of the game when it comes to like developing for VR is quick iteration, right? We want to be able to quickly test our changes. It's not like in regular Unity development where you can just press play, wait however amount of time the editor wants to wait, and then it's ready, right? In the past, it used to be that you needed to build constantly, right? And as I said, your first build could take 15 minutes, the second one could take 3-4 minutes. If you have a powerful computer, probably not as harsh of a wait, but still, it's a bit of a wait, right? A wait that can be reduced to a few seconds if you use the Oculus Link, right? So, as I was mentioning, when you add you just press the button and you can add them, right? And if they require some sort of dependency, it will be added. So this is the scene that I prepared for you guys. I kind of just grab a bunch of assets from example scenes, but if you start from scratch, here, completely empty scene, and let's say I have my building blocks and I have my, where is the interaction? Oh, it's already there. Okay, you just didn't know. If I add, for example, the cube, there you go. The first thing that does is, okay, here's my cube, but also it has added a camera array. Now, I intentionally made this a little bit larger, so it's a little bit hard to read all of the things, but it should be easier to read on a screen, right? So if you see here your camera array, and you see here the building block component, the building block component always says, hey, this one is being used by the grab interaction that you have on your cube, right? And the cube itself, we say, hey, the dependencies, because you didn't have them before, they were added, but on its own, if I delete the cube, the camera remains, right? So that's kind of like how that kind of chaining system works, right? It'll bring you what you need, and if they're connected, it'll let you know if they're missing, right? So it's very, very easy. But let's go to the actual sample scene that I prepared for you guys because, oh, sorry, that's not the sample scene. There you go. I basically did grab a bunch of the assets that were previously available, but I gave them like a few new interesting things, right? So the first thing that I want to show you is this cube right here. Same cube that you grabbed, but the first thing that I added was this interactable Unity event wrapper, right? And I made it so that every single event will change the state of a text that I added right here that will show us what it is. Now, not all of them show at the gate because some of these events do, in a way, like happen after one another. So, for example, on hover always gets not overwritten, but like it happens after on select. So if you need a specific event, this is kind of where you get it, right? And again, you just have to make sure that the building block that you're referring to, in this case, you go down, there is a hand grabbable because this is the events that I want to know, right? I want to know when this hand grab interactable gets picked up, right? Be aware that like hand grab interactable and grab interactable are a little bit different, but it's an extension of one another, right? The thing that makes hand grab interactable like unique is that once you have it, you can have poses with your hands, right? So if I have a grab at a pose, which I'll probably undo, you see that as a child, I can actually have a hand that I can literally just grab and pose myself, right? So that's the left hand, so it should go on the left. There you go. Let's say I want the group, the cube to be grabbed from somewhere like this, right? And that will be the pose. And then to just do the other hand, there is a mirror button, which is right here. That basically just creates another object with a pose that's similar, but reverse, right? So you can see that's actually a left hand. So if I just put them here, they're there, right? That is not necessary. It's just, something that you can do that is very useful based on like what the question was, right? Now, let's see if this runs. So we're going to jump into virtual reality. Edit the buttons, secret to files unit development. Absolutely. If I'm not mistaken, the Meta with AI comes with attributes, and one of those attributes is the ability to make any um, function that you have as an editor button. So that's actually another really handy tool. So let me just jump here into virtual reality. Okay, yeah, I'm in what we affectionately know as the grid. And if I press play here, see, now we are kind of running short of time. So I'm just going to make sure that we can see this fairly quickly. I'm just going to get rid of this. Another big piece of advice, if your game window is actually not visible, like if I go into the scene, your headset's going to be black, like it's going to have no video. And all you need to do is just make sure that the game window is actually present. So I made a mistake of like hiding it. Oh, where is the animator? Okay. Um, wow, that's a bit of a bug. Sorry about that. Let me make sure that the game window is actually visible, and let's just make it so that it goes maximized on its own. That way, there's no issues. I think it's because we scaled the game window a little bit, and that might just not convey properly the pointer events. But that's a Unity issue, not a project issue. Hopefully. All right, let's see. Let's press play. Okay, awesome. So you should be able to see this. Okay, so can I get just a quick thumbs up? Make sure that you guys can actually see my screen in virtual reality. Awesome. Thank you very much. All right, so in this, oh no, okay, there you go. In this handy cube, all it does is when I grab it, it'll tell me, oh no, did it disconnect? Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah, it disconnected. Okay, I did make a change during the scene. So I'm just gonna undo that change. I think it's because I changed the interactable. Scene sample. If I just reload this scene, it should be fine. Okay, did we have only the things that we need? Yes, that looks correct. Awesome. Okay, again, sorry about that. Don't make live changes. You will regret, just like I did. The awesome course of a live demo, right? All right, there you go. It's loaded again. There you go. I can actually see. Yeah, there you go. Last event, right? So if you see this wonderful cube, all it does is it'll tell us when it's being grabbed, right? And you can see that if I get my hand on select, it'll do select, right? On hover, it doesn't hover. And again, not all of the methods, uh, all of the events are visible because some of them like just happen after one another and you just see the last event. But if you want to see a specific event, just make sure to like have that on the event wrapper. One of the things that you can see, for example, is, hey, an interactor view has been added, right? Which means that I have added more than one interactor to this interactable, in this case, a hand grab. So when I let it go, hey, the last thing that happens is on hover. If I, for example, remove that event, where on hover is the last one, you'll see, for example, when it does unselected, right? Which means when the object has been released. So here, the on hover, if I just remove that listener, this is the one that should show up, right? Like the event has been unselected. So again, it's a very, very handy tool to just have and know without having to write any extra code when events pertinent to the state of your interactable are happening, right? Again, I grab this, I select it, I unselect it, right? Like it's just unhover happens right after that. So, but for example, if we grab this one, I actually added the capability of this one to be able to be grabbed through the race. So when I added that, the race on the hands get automatically added to my rig. you can see that there's an event of the pointer has been moved, and this object extends pointable, where this one only extends interactable. So you see how when I do this, oh, you can see the event move happen. You can see that it's selected, and you can see when it stops on hovering, right? Again, some of the events do override one another. So for example, the move pointer on top of the object is the last one that is being executed. But again, if I just remove the listener from that event, you will see when it's being selected and unselected, right? Okay, let's see, pointable unity event wrapper, right? So you see, this is a different, it looks very similar because it's a lot of events, but it is a different component. So just keep that in mind, right? For example, if I can remove this listener, you play it again. Come on, Unity. We have stuff to go through. There you go. You can see that selected and then unselected, right? Hover, unhover, hover, unhover. Selected, unselected, selected, unselected. So just like this little exercise on like getting subscribed to these events, it's actually going to give you a lot of insight of when these events are actually firing, right? And for example, as I said, hey, if you're trying to look for an event and it's not happening, you can see when it's happening or if there's another event that happens after it. And this pointable event, it actually applies also for UI elements. So I, again, made this. And if you see when I press the trigger, it says, hey, it's been unselected or selected, right? This canvas itself has the same pointable event wrapper that this one does. And again, all they do is they just set the text, and I haven't even written a single line of code, right? Now, because we're a little bit short on time, I'm just gonna like kind of like speed through these ones as well. In these ones, I grab one of the examples for objects that can be snapped. And I enable a component that is a component that gives you feedback for what the state of the grabbable is. So for example, this interactable relies on a snap zone, and it will try to snap it to the closest object there is, right? Blue means that it's in a hover state, which means that can be, it's gonna snap to the closest object. And if you pay attention, you can see the orbit that will actually snap into, right? But it also has a couple of configurations that, for example, if I let it go and I wait 3 seconds, it will automatically snap back into what I had designated as its timeout interactable. This interactable as well is also its default interactable that if you pay attention, when we started the application, this sphere was actually around here, which means that this one automatically will snap to its default interactable, right? You can have them be set in a default position, and that default position would be fully enabled. Uh, just a word of advice, if you do try to use this snappable scene, be aware that all of these objects are actually in the water layer. And why is that? Is because performance. One of the big things is when you have colliders, because this is a collider-based system, you want to make sure that they're only interacting with the objects that you want them to collide with. Because of how the Unity physics work, every collider, every frame, and every collision will try to see if it's colliding with every object in the scene. So if you limit how many objects are in the same layer, then your colliders are going to be a lot more efficient, right? So if you ever want to like try the scene, replicate the setup, it's not working, just be aware that like all of this is set up as part of the water layer, right? So I have this another interactable, and that's nice and dandy. And I also made these keys right here, which are part of the hand grab system. You see when I grab it, it actually uses not the trigger, not the grip, but the trigger, because this is a pinch grabbable, which is something that you can set up manually. You can find this key on the hand grab scene, and I made them snappable. So when you put them there you go, they can snap, right? And that's nice, that's dandy, right? But you'll see this lock right here, right? Let's say that you have some sort of puzzle game and you want to be able to like only snap keys, right? So if I let it go, you can see there that it snaps, right? But these other objects that are snappable, you don't want them to be able to snap to that object, right? Because like, hey, you cannot open your lock with a key. And this object that has that debug capability of telling you when it's in proximity, you put it right here, it tells you, hey, it's not interacting because we use the tag set filters. So in this case, I had set these keys up so that they have the tag key, and I have set this lock so that it only allows objects to interact if they have the tag key, right? So if I do this, they will snap, and they can snap into other snappable spots, but only the keys can be snapped into the lock, right? And then just to finalize, you can have your keys, but I wrote a very, very small piece of code, again, just to show how simple it is, where only the right key will unlock the lock. So I put the key, doesn't work. Oh, here's the golden key. What happens if I insert it? There you go. My lock opens. It shows just, an animation, right? And this was like 5 lines of code, 5 lines of code as a very simple thing, right? You'll see it unlocks only with that key, right? So um, again, this is for when you want to have something like, really low code, being able to like prove your proof of concept very easily, very quickly. And then once you have provided that proof of concept as something that really is what you want to do, then you can start making like more complex interactions. Now, I'm gonna come out of virtual reality just to see if there's any more questions. No? Awesome. And okay, apologies. My attention was partially bad because I missed it. I see the OVR camera rig. Does this mean that the Oculus interaction asset still required um, through what's propagated? Is SDK interactions still dependent on all the VR stuff? The answer is kind of maybe. This OVR rig is basically just like you know for all the OVR manager stuff. Hey, do you want to target these specific devices? But if you actually see the rig and you see the objects that are part of it, you can see that the hand controllers and everything that adds the poses are actually separate objects, which means that like they're not like you can disable them, you can remove them, you can they don't have a dependency um to these things. Like you can see like they have the center anchors and whatnot. It says grab and poses. Are they hard set, or can grabbing an object work based off of finger collisions to grab any orientations? Where fingers close and collide with a grabbable object, creating dynamic poses at runtime according to relative positions for proper visual needed for any grabbable. The answer is there's multiple ways to achieve to skin that specific cat. The thing that I would recommend is for you to look at the hand grab scene, because that one has. Is this the one? This is where I stole the. No, that's not the one. Hand pose tool, hand grab examples. Yes. In that one, you'll find actually several ways of grabbing an object that can have multiple, as you said, poses. Not all of them can be need to be hard set, and you can actually have a grabbable without a pose. So you see right here, this one, it's grabbed with no pose, right? So I'm just gonna play this in because it's actually such a great example of what you're describing. Um, okay, let's hope everything plays quickly. There you go. So this one, again, great source of information. You can see that you have your pose that is not relative to where you're grabbing it from. It will play the animation on your hand of what you're grabbing, but your fingers are actually detached, and you can set which fingers are free form on every pose depending on where you grab. So for example, this one with the grip key, it actually defaults to the pinch. So that also means that I can grab it with a pinch, and then the rest of my fingers are free to go. And um, this is with controller-driven hands. If you have hand tracking on, this still works exactly the same. And when you do this pose with your fingers, it will use to grab it, and you will still have full range of control over your fingers. So that's kind of a way to solve that specific problem where what do you do with the fingers that are not and the poses that take, right? If you see right here, this one actually has a specific pose, but depending on how you grab it, the fingers will snap to it or not. And again, the poses are depending on what you're doing, right? You can see here, I'm using the touchpad to like actually move the finger, and it responds naturally, right? And then this one is the one that has the most amount of poses, right? So you can see here, you can see that I can grab it from the top, I can grab it from the ear, I can grab it from here. Like it has a multitude of possible poses where you can have it. And the best part is there's an editor tool that allows you to use hand tracking in real time to set the poses yourself. So while setting the poses might be a tiny bit of a chore, you can like setting them up is very quickly and very easily. Ray says, there's also hand pose recorded. Yeah, that's the one. Can you give out by the other end of the key, or is that pose set versus dynamic? And the best part is because they are here as like listed, you will be able to see like what the poses are and tweak them manually if you really need to, right? It will just basically snap to the closest pose that you have. So you, I would say sometimes it's better to have a little bit of control over what the poses are from the point of view that, yes, but that is, think of it from like a game design. You don't want to be so open that your user spends more time seeing how they can grab the mug versus actually using the mug as an item in your game, right? Like that's kind of like where you need to like strike a balance between like fully dynamic posing and designed posing in a way, right? So awesome. I hope that helped. So anyway, that was it for the Unity part. Again, all of this is all together as a thing that you can use and combine. And just to like wrap up, there is a second part of the presentation, right? F5. You skip to where they were. All right. Now, this is actually just scratching the surface. The SDK itself actually contains a myriad of ways of combining input into several user interactions. So there's a lot of things that we kind of just glazed over. So for example, you can do hand posing. Well, we kind of talked about it. There's UI interactions. There's poke interactions. So you can have objects that respond to your fingers with the proximity. But that can be also applied to UI. You can set custom gestures that the system will respond to. You can do grabbing from a distance. We can also with the laser, right? There is grabbing interactions, and while this sounds like a word salad of things that we've already done, what this means is that objects that you can grab, you can also assign functions to them, right? Let's say you have some sort of drill, you have it grab, but you can also make it spin when you have user input, or all sorts of things. And you're not limited to using your controllers or your hand. You can do what is known as multi-modal input, which means that you can use both controllers and one controller, one hand at the same time. So I saw like this really great use of it with a horror game where you have your real hand and then on your other hand have a lamp that you have to hold, right? So that actually feels very immersive because you have the high fidelity tracking of the controller and 100% user intent, but with the immersion of using your own hand for some interactions, right? So my recommendation is download it, see what's possible, and start designing from there, right?